G'day, and welcome. It's a little snowy out there. I think today is the last day I'm gonna ride my bicycle. I'd say it was slippy out there, but just like that much snow, and I'm like, it's like, and people can't see you, and the roads get narrow and stuff like that. So I brought my some of my weights down. I was walking across the field, and my cousin Matt and Brittany were there. I'm like, I'm training for Rocky 9. Like, what? Okay. uh, I pranked them pretty good. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the gripping videos. I know I can get away with those. Um, I'm gonna hopefully not go too long on the video because I do have to get a lot done today. I got a little bit done here last night, but last night I discovered something. Uh, like some of my mom's old Elvis collectibles and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get into that today. Started cleaning up the room in there a bit, organizing. What I have to do is go through everything I own and say yay or nay. Toss it, trade it, sell it, give it away, whatever. Of stuff I just don't, because it's like like you grab every little thing. It's like, no, I need this. No, I need this, and then it's like, because I don't own a lot of stuff, but everything I do has almost a utilitarian purpose. It's either a tool or a toy. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, but it's still good. The question has to become then, do I keep it because whatever? And then there's nostalgia stuff, but there's like next year I want to have a big yard sale, and in that yard sale, there's going to be stuff. We'll just say that there's going to be stuff. Don't know if I'll sell any of it, but I'm going to try anyway. Phase one, some of it I can give away. I've already given like so much junk away, stuff I could have probably sold, but like just like little stuff. I'm giving away boxes and boxes of stuff. Just before I moved to the thrift shop in the town. But anyway, another story for another time. Okay, Canadian armed forces to expand to 300,000. I forget what our numbers are right now. If you added everybody in, it's like it's about 130,000. But like fighting force, it's like 15,000 guys, 25,000 guys, up or down, depending on how many guys quit and whatever. So it's not a big military, right? We are at last count like the 48th largest military, and probably about the 17th or 18th most advanced. So so what we lack in numbers, we make up for in technology, right? And that's kind of a theme with the Western world. But they want to expand the numbers, and one way they want to expand the numbers is with a basically a conscript army. Okay, but where they want to get this army is through government workers, which I don't understand. Why just government workers? You know what I mean? Uh, and the way I'm looking at it, okay, most conservatives are out there going, it's a bad idea. Why would they do this? You see what happens to the poor conscripts in Ukraine, right? Yeah, conscripts don't typically fare out well in battle, but that's not the point of a conscript, right? That's not really the point of them. Like desperate version of a conscript would be the French Resistance in World War II. You know what I mean? Like, that's okay. These guys, they got pitchforks and shotguns, farming shotguns, and that's they got to do what they can, right? But they're not a trained military or militia or like that. So most people are saying, okay, this is a ridiculous idea. Why would we do it? So the question is, do I support it? Do I not support it? Well, most conservatives are partisan on the news that are allowed on the news, but 90% of the news is liberal, right? So up here in Canada, because the CBC is a liberal, and all the umbrella corporations underneath, like CTV, CHRO, I remember CJOH, I don't think they're around anymore, but anyway, they're all basically umbrella corporation under the CBC. So they're all going to tote the same. Whatever you see on CTV, you're going to see on CBC. It's really kind of strange that we have these other channels when they're just really, parroting, the same thing, right? So they talk about it and whatever. So the liberals, people tend to be against drafts and conscription and stuff like that, right? Because they're usually pretty anti-military. Conservatives are usually for the draft and conscripts, right? And whatever. My take is this: yes, I do support the concept, but not for the reasons you want. Like, for example, the idea of drafting government workers sounds like a great idea, but what is a government worker? Now, I'm going to take some pot shots here. Don't get butt hurt. But okay, I'm a guy who works with chainsaws, whippersnippers, lawnmowers, shovels, pickaxes, a real, you name it, skill saws, like stuff like that. A lot of brunt labor, right? 52 years old. I'm probably in better shape than most people 25, right? Even though I complain all the time that I'm sore about, but I'm actually a pretty like people. Every time I work for somebody for the first time, they're like, "Oh my God, you're a fast worker," and they can't believe like what my buddy and I, how fast and how efficient we are. But that's because we're doing it all the time, right? Now I think about all my government worker friends, okay, and I'm not taking pot shots at them, but they're little, how do I say it, a little pudgy. They're getting a little pudgy. I mean, I'm not perfect. I know, but they're getting a little pudgy. Why? Because the average government worker is trying to avoid physical labor, right? So let's be honest here. So maybe that's not the best place to pool the conscript army. I'm not saying rule it out. I'm saying don't make that your main source because most people, it's like, you mean I have to go outside on a rainy day? Again, government workers are not known for wanting to be very physical, right? The obesity rate and life expectancy of a government worker is much higher. Not life expectancy. The life expectancy of men that work in offices is usually shorter because sitting there stagnant all day for 8 hours a day staring at a screen is just not good for you, right? You need to be, and it's not good for women either, but for men, like men need to be way more physical, right? So like the guy that works like the courier, okay, that guy's fine. He's freaking fit as a fiddle because all he does is either jump in like guys running up and down stairs all day, right? So yeah, I mean every courier I've ever known, when I was living in the city, they were all, even if they were a little overweight, they were all like you'd see them running up and down stairs. You know, what I mean they're all in good shape for whatever, and most of them were fit as fiddles. It's like, oh, you in the military? No, I'm a courier. And there was one guy, he blew my mind when he told me he was 50. And I mean, this guy was just like, I'm like, what, did you work out or something? He goes, no. I eat normal. And this guy was like trim and everything like that. But then, he'd come in with like a tote of packages and a whole bunch of bags on his, like he'd do the whole building in like 5 minutes. And it was like, okay, there's like eight floors here, and he did that in like 5 minutes. And most of that 5 minutes was him stopping. Hey, how you doing? Blah blah. Like the guy was so hyper. He was worse than me, right? I loved him. He was great. And we'd shoot the ship. I was a security guard. We'd shoot the ship for like, a couple of minutes, and then he'd take off to the next place. I'm like, it looked like a job that was actually quite enjoyable if you were a sociable person. You know what I mean? You were an antisocial person. I gotta go deal with people. Well, you're dealing with people. It's like door-to-door customer service, right? So like it's, but not everybody's pleasant with you. It's like, here, this needs to be over there. Thank you. See you later. Or you get somebody on the phone, like, yeah, you just do that and you grab it, and you go, right? Okay, fine. So you learn who you can talk to, and then there's always the really nice secretary that's whatever. So it's up and down, right? It's one of those jobs, but you're in shape. So like somebody like that would be a perfect candidate for a conscript, wouldn't they? So what's proposed? The entire details I'm not aware of, but the idea is to go up to like 300,000 to 350,000 conscripts. We need it. You get 1 week of training, okay, and then I think it's 1 week a month for a year or something like that, which is close to what I had imagined. If I was prime minister, it would be, yes, conscript, voluntary conscript, basics more similar to like the Swiss and Swedish and the Nordic models, where what they do is you do a year of training and then 3 years, 1 month a week for like 3 years or something like that. And I'm like, that's great, but for a conscript, that'd be a big expense. We wouldn't be able to afford it. But what you could do, okay, and we already kind of do this, and it's called the Third Canadian Rangers. They're up north. They get, they get a nice red sweater, and whatever, and a 303 British, or now the Tika, that Tika that they got, which some people say, oh, it's a good rifle. It's not a good rifle. The laminate rifle doesn't do as well up in the Arctic as the composite stock rifle. So there was some issues with it, right? And these things are expensive, but they're a good rifle overall. I wouldn't mind having one, especially with the nice, Armed Forces logo, maple leaves on it. I think that'd be, yeah, it works. So we got the Finnish Tika in there, replacing our like 100-year-old, well, I guess it'd be 80 to 100 years old, some of them, 303 Britishes, which I still love the 303 British. I still have mine here, but, what they call polar bear repellent up there. But that's what these guys are. They are basically, they patrol, they're a volunteer group, rifle chair. He used to watch my channels and stuff like that. He's on my Facebook. I talk to him from time to time. Great guy. He seems like a great guy. He was a 3rd Canadian Ranger, and I was always fascinated by it. I think that I did a video on my old channel about the 3rd Canadian Rangers and up in the Arctic. I'm like, why don't we have that everywhere in the country? Well, a conscript could do this. So 1 week of training, I'd rather see 3 weeks of training. Okay, yes. And people are like, yeah, but you're not even going to get a uniform. That's not what's important. The training is what's important. You want to make a T-shirt, fine. That would be fine. But for the expense, I'd rather than buying us T-shirts, how about you give us an extra training? You know what I mean? So what's involved with the training? That's what I don't know. So if it's 1 week of light firearms use, let's say one requirement. Let's say you got government worker A and government worker B. Government worker A doesn't have a firearms license. Government worker B does. I would offer to him first. Hey, do you want to be drafted first because you already got your firearms license? Means we don't have to do that for you. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to go through you don't have to take the course. So it's weird that our government is trying to take our guns away on one hand and then train us up on another. But I think what I would say is like, okay, fine. Here's what I would say. Give them the 1 week training, but give them the training, people with firearms license, okay? I think to be eligible, you should have a firearms license if you're going to be a conscript. That's kind of, if the paratroopers Red Dawn style are coming in, I know that's a little bit of a fantasy. Like no sane military would try a Red Dawn invasion, not even over Canada, not even, especially not over Canada. Like, you land in the wrong spot, you die. You know what I mean? You're going to die of exposure or get eaten by a bear or a wolf or something. If if we know you're coming, we got a lot of duck hunters. It would be really bad for paratroopers. Paratroopers, like what we're seeing in the Ukraine, the tank, the aircraft, the paratrooper, the helicopter, these things have kind of all gone semi-obsolete in the Ukraine. You can't use them like the way, Flight of Valkyries, Vietnam style coming in. You can't do those kind of helicopter raids anymore. They'll all get shot down. If there's any sort of air defense in the area at all, or drones, kamikaze drones, you're going to get shot down, and air defense, what have you. But what you could do is take your conscript for that 1 week, if it's going to be just 1 week, is introduce them to the C7 rifle, okay? Get them trained up on it, maybe the C7, the C8, and the Timberwolf, and if they're still using, and the TAC 50, just at least let everybody try a shot of the TAC 50. You know what I mean? This is how it works. Give them some rifles to play around with the action, except like that. Let them shoot a couple of rounds out of it. Okay, that would work really well. That would be good incentive. Like, here's your duck hunting rifle. Here's your your 30-06 Model 70. yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I already got that at home. You know what I mean? You got to give them something that, maybe you can even put them on the light machine gun. Okay, here's how you load it. Here's how to do it. The next thing this is what I would, if you had 1 week of training, okay, I would introduce you to the main, well, we can't call it a battle rifle, it's a battle carbine with the C7 for sure, okay, and all the kit and how to maintain that, how to take it apart, how to put it back together, okay. That might be day one, okay, and by the end of the day, next to that, here's how you handle a firearm safely. All this, here's the manuals, everything like that. Here's how you handle a firearm on the range. I'm a range guy. I'm a target shooter. I'd give you all that stuff. And then, like the running and gunning and stuff like that, you're not going to get into that in the first week. That would take up the whole week. But you can get them, okay, now we're going to take you out, and here's some targets at 50 yards, pop them. Most people are going to do it. Okay, you seem to be pretty good. Okay, the target is only 50 yards. You're not, okay, here's how you dial in the rifle. Right, because they need to know that. It's the first thing you need to know is how to dial in your rifle. You'll never become a good shooter if you have to compensate for. Okay, it shoots 3 inches to the left, and 2 inches high or so. Like you can't compensate for that. You know what I mean? No, the first thing you do when you get a rifle is you got to dial it in, right? And you fire a shot, you see where it is you fire a shot off the sandbag, you see where it is. Okay, fine. Now you've got. A reference of where if you're on paper or not. You can use a bore sighter to get the rifles pretty close, but I would purposely put the rifles out of not far out enough that they're still shooting on paper, but to get the people to learn. Okay, this is how you do a click, fire another shot. Maybe they fire 10 shots to get it dialed in, but they now know how to dial it in, the basics, right? Because rifles get dropped in the military, and then you got the sight went out a bit, right? So if they're using iron sights, learn that. If they're using the ECLAN, if they're using that thing, teach them how to use it, right? Just crash course, like this. Adjust your elevation here. Here's how you turn it on. Blah blah. Here's how you safely, But if you're starting with people that already have a firearms license, you got the handling part, the acts and the prove out of the way, right? So that's why I'd conscript people with a firearms license. Give them the first kick at the can. The people that don't have it, yeah, okay, we'll say yes, you can be a conscript, but you got to go get your firearms license. You got to do this. So after all the background checks and all that stuff, okay. So this is day one. Okay. So by the end of day one, you have light firearms training on the C7 rifle, and you're good to go for week one, okay? Day two, okay, you need to know basic signals. You need to know how to communicate with the Canadian Armed Forces fairly well, just on a basic level, so you understand their ranking system, all that stuff. And understand how to assist the Canadian military. They're going to talk, okay, they're going to get a bunch of conscripts. Okay, well, the conscripts, look, here's how you do the sandbagging. We have a flood. We don't have enough military, but we can get you there. It's just we need bodies, right, to help with the sandbagging. Teach people how to sandbag, okay? Teach them how to do search and rescue. Again, crash course. You're talking a week. Right, that's why I say it'd have to be about 3 weeks. Day 3, first aid. But if you want to eliminate that out of the course, here's what you do. Crash course first aid, half a day, right? But start introducing first aid courses in this. Why does our school system not have a mandatory first aid class? Like what politically incorrect thing is happening that it's like, oh, it's too offensive to do that, or whatever. What excuse are they using? You can't use budget. It's like, no, they're there. You could send, the first aid. If you teach children first aid, they will retain that information their entire lives, right? You do a refresher once a year. We do it at just about every job you go to, how to use the fire extinguisher, except, just basic level stuff, but stuff that could save a lot of lives, right? That I'm all for, because now you're no longer just a conscript for the military, but now you can help out EMTs, you can help out, and you can get a certification in this. Remember, this is only week 1, so we're on day 2, right? Day 3, kind of more of the same, like how to deal with natural disasters, how to fight a fire, how to assist firefighters, ambulance, EMTs, stuff like that. The military, how to deliver food, how to set up checkpoints, stuff like that, how to navigate, basically like Boy Scouts. It's like a 1 week Boy Scout course, right? That's why they had the Boy Scouts. That's why they had it. But then it turned political and they destroyed the Boy Scouts and we don't have it anymore, right? Now it's like it's just a free for all that doesn't really work. No, you got to bring back the Boy Scouts. Your Boy Scouts is the reason why. Okay, I never got to go to the Boy Scouts, but I had every Boy Scout book. You know what I mean? Like Boy Scouts is just a no-brainer of making a competent, self-reliant society. It's your first. I know it's a loaded term, but it's your first access to prepping and being prepared for natural disasters, helping people, helping little old ladies across the road, showing you how to do kindness, something that our society is kind of severely lacking. Yeah, so you could do a lot of this conscript training de facto in the schools. Like okay, maybe not the firearms part because the kids aren't old enough, but you could get the first aid done there, and if they get that, they get checked off. Well, then you can have like several different packages for that first week of training if you're only going to stick with the 1 week. I think it should be 3 or the full month. Like a full month of training, you're going to get a crash course, 6 months military training and civic duty training in say a month. So 40 hours a week for a month. Okay, you get paid leave from your regular job and you come back after a month. And okay, you don't do everything the armed forces do like you don't have like again the like I like the idea of it but the idea is like okay, well, we just need conscripts so we can send them to the Ukraine and die. No one's going to want that. But if it's civil defense, civil protection, civil civil natural disaster relief, civil like just helping being just resilient people for your country. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. You just do it, right? Most people would probably volunteer, but you can take the best of your pick, but give them a month's worth of training, 3 weeks to a month, and then the 1 weekend a month you can refine. Okay, so you've done your week training and it's all the basic stuff. Here's the military. Here's how it works. Here's their ranking system. Here's how to speak to the military in the languages that they use on rough rigshaw, and you can pick up the rest as you go, right? But just to get it so that if the military needed people, you could be useful to them, saying, okay, look, we have a natural disaster. Okay, there's a wildfire. We'll call it a wildfire. Not arson, but we'll call it a wildfire. Okay, we got a wildfire. Okay, the firefighters need a lot of help. They need people to, who could drive a truck? Oh, you could drive a big truck? Okay, yeah. We need somebody to run the water tanker back and forth, and we need some people to help with the hoses. Okay, there you go. And, like you could do that stuff if you have a light understanding of it. You'll be limited, but you're still going to be helpful. Sandbagging is probably going to be the most useful thing for people to learn, and how to evacuate, dangerous areas, how to detect smoke, in houses and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of things you can do, you know what I mean? And again, you're not going to learn all that in 1 month. Like my buddy's a firefighter. My brother was a firefighter for about a minute. I still have his firefighter suit here. Like it takes a long time, and he's in a voluntary firefighter, like around here, it's all volunteer firefighters. And it takes a long time to train these guys up to get everything, like the how to use the Jaws of Life, the CBSA stuff. That takes a long time to train that, So you got to work your way there. So at first you're just, like kind of helping running hoses and hooking things up. Then you're breaking entry for the other firefighters and helping them move in. Right, and then you're, next thing you know, you're in the house while it's burning with your CBSI on and trying to, fight the fire as a team, right? but that takes a lot of training. You're not going to do that in 1 week or even a month. But you can get the crash course of this is what you would have to learn. Now you could sector it out too. Okay, well, like for example, like the training you'd get here in Quebec might be a little bit different, more forest fire focused and stuff like that, and maybe a light touching on, say, maritime rescue. Okay, we'll talk about it, but whatever. If you're in Newfoundland, okay, yeah, we're gonna maybe the fires you'll get a light touching on how to deal with forest fires, but we're gonna give you a big crash. Bulk part of the course is going to be on maritime rescue, because you're more likely there to have to go rescue a fishing boat or something like that. So it could be that. But if you had a 4-week course, you could have it everywhere. So 1 week you're in Quebec, 1 week you're in Alberta, the next week you're out in Nova Scotia or Newfoundland or Labrador training there, and you could spend the final one up in the Arctic, right? And you could have all this really cool course. So I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And then 1 week a month for 3 years or a year or whatever. Okay, well, in that time, okay, so let's say you just did that. Okay, now let's get back to the weapons training stuff. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so you got your guy, week 1, he learns how to use the C7 rifle. It's very similar to the Canadian military or the American military or whatever, where you just get the base, the base go-to rifle, right? And you can get a semi-automatic version or whatever, or the burst version, whatever. It doesn't matter. Train them on both. But I would like to adopt in this model the Swiss model, where their people, like they do their service, and then after that they can go to a gun range, like a government-approved gun range. And they get basically, here's your ammo. I don't know how much ammo they give, if they give them 100 rounds, if they give them 10 rounds, whatever it is. But you get, maybe once a week, once a month, or whatever it is, you can go shoot for free just to keep your skills up. That's a great idea. But yes, that would be a very expensive thing. So maybe you only get 10 rounds or something like that. Okay. Maybe we have a conscript rifle. That's a bolt action rifle. You train on the C7 and a bolt action rifle, and say 6.5 Creedmoor, 308, or even 223, whatever it's going to be. I think 308 would be probably the no-brainer, just because it's so available, or 7.6251, right? And let's say after, if you do 5 years of service, you get to keep the rifle for free, and it's some sort of, maybe it's the Tikka rifle or whatever. And you have to qualify to keep the rifle. Maybe even go one up, say people that show extraordinary marksmanship can have a competition to win Attack 50 or the Timberwolf or whatever. That would be really cool. That'd be great incentive. I would do that because it'd take me 5 years to afford a rifle like that, right? There's all kinds of stuff like that, but yeah, like you could train like if you're going to train people and then say, okay, well, they got their training, 1 week of training, they're good for life. Well, that doesn't work. So the first weekend of the first month after you get your 1 week training, well, okay, guys, this is a recap on some of the survival stuff. Here's how to tie a lanyard. Here's all this. Here's all that. Okay, now this is that's the morning. You do some survival stuff, whatever, some civic duty stuff. Maybe it's like, okay, well, we're gonna help clean up certain areas and stuff like that. We're gonna go do some forest management or something like that, right? Okay, this time of year, okay, we're gonna use the conscripts. We're gonna train you up on a chainsaw, and we're gonna, send you out and cut away old growth forest like we used to do to get back to forest management, so we don't get so many fires spreading, right? Or get back to burning the old growth like we used to, and stay on top of that, right? So we could do these things. We could and then maybe day 2 you get put on a post somewhere, fire watch in a tower somewhere, but you get to go somewhere around the country. Okay, great. That'd be fantastic. Maybe you go up to the Arctic. Maybe you go to the prairies. Maybe you go to the East Coast, the West Coast, wherever it is, the Maritimes. And they do that. Okay, and that's your week training. Then you're back to work on Monday or Tuesday or whatever. And then the following one, okay, well, you did that last time. Okay, this time, this is a mortar. Okay, this is an 80 millimeter mortar. Here's how it was, 80 or 81 millimeter mortar. Here's how it works. Okay, and kind of World War II style. You spend the morning do that. Here's the manual how to use it. Now you can assist the Canadian military to be a mortar crew. That would be great. Why? Because mortars are still relevant on the battlefield, right? And then in the afternoon you do something else. Maybe you do, like some sort of helicopter rescue or something like that. Something really cool, right? And you just get a crash course in it. You learn how to jump out of a helicopter or something like that. Then you go the next month. Okay, well, you're gonna do a skydiving thing. You get a skydiver certificate, which takes a long time to get that actually, but you start working on that, right? And okay, this is how you use a light machine gun. Okay, now here's how you resuscitate somebody and treat burn victims, etc., etc. So you learn that. So each month you get something new. Every 2 days, like every 2 days of training, you get a crash course on something new. So after a year, maybe even 3 years, you have a crash course in everything the Canadian military does, right? And everything the EMTs do, and everything firefighters do, and everything that search and rescue does. So you're not an expert in it, but you have knowledge on it. And then, of course, you get the books, stuff like that. You study up on it. And again, you can have a ranking system. Okay, here's the people I just went through the training, and here's the people who are interested in the training. Okay, well, maybe we give them a couple extra bonus trainings. Okay, well, we go, if you really want, okay, you get your 1 week training, right? But we have another like a 1 week course on this. Okay, and we'll send you. This is already stuff that they already do, but they do it for the Reg Forces. But maybe you join alongside the Reg Forces. Not enough to get in their way, but enough to, okay, well, we're going to participate in as conscripts, right? And depending on what, like maybe you don't get to drive a tank, but maybe you learn how to refuel the tank and reload the tank. Maybe you don't fly the aircraft, okay, fine. But as a teaser, and this would also boost recruitment because people like, okay, well, I was helping to arm the aircraft and, refuel the aircraft and stuff like that. And not enough to get in the way, but there's always people that have potential, right? And you recruit from your recruits of the most potential. So, yes, I always thought that a civic nationalist duty was a good idea. I always thought the Swedish model and the Finnish model and the Norway and all that and Switzerland, they had the concept right. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want to do that. Now, the way I believe it works in Sweden, if you're Swedish, you'll let me know, is that they obviously can't draft everybody, right? But what they do is they put a draft out, and you get something in the mail and says you've been selected for the draft, and then you have to qualify. I don't know if you could just say no, I don't want to do it, right? But you get selected, right? So I think there's still a process, but the thing is like for the Swedish military to be actually in the Swedish military as a regular force, you gotta, like that, you gotta jump, you gotta earn that. Like it's not like, okay, we're drafting you, want to be in the regular forces. Like say, no, you gotta. That's why we have, regular forces and reservists. But you see, this adds another branch. This is regular for we'll have our, 130,000 reg forces at all times, whatever. And our fighting force is not very big, but maybe it gets a bit bigger. But then we have reservists, right? And like my buddy, he was a reservist for like, I don't know how many years before they would accept him into the regular armed forces. Because almost everybody starts off as a reservist, right? They did like 6 months of training, and it was 1 weekend a month for like 3 years or something like that. And I always thought that was good, and that was kind of what I was more going for. But the problem is you always stayed at a lower level because the enticement was if you wanted to play with the big toys, you had to be a service, like an actual serviceman, like an actual part of the Canadian, regular forces, right? Meaning that would be your main job. So yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think they kind of, I don't know if they shopped it right or not, saying, okay, well, we're gonna, again, you got to think of the government worker, right? The average government worker is a donut eating, very lazy person. You know what I mean? I worked in government office buildings. You're not going to BS me on it. Trust me, these people, even the ones that look like they're in shape a lot of times, like these people are sitting down all day. They've got very low testosterone. Like they're very low T. They don't have a lot of energy. Now you got the odd guy that goes to the gym or the girl that goes to the gym. Okay, yeah, that's kind of. And I remember I had a lot of friends that worked in the government buildings. Who were like, oh, geez, dude, I'm getting fat. I got to start hitting the gym. Like I need to offset the 40 hours of sitting on my ass, right? Because they just got so low energy. You know what I mean? And that's what happens when you don't move around enough is you get really low energy, which is not good for you. So I'm for it. I think there's a right way to go about it. I think 1 week of training, like Scott Taylor, he does the like Canadian Armed Forces. He's an ex-armed forces guy. He's a veteran, and he basically does like Canadian Armed Forces news and stuff like that. And he critiqued it a bit, what some of the problems were, and some of the problems what most people say about conscripts is obviously they don't have the proper training. You can't send a conscript into combat against seasoned soldiers. Like they'll just get slaughtered, right? And that's true, but that's not the concept of what they're meant to really be used for. Now, in theory, right? Like again, it's meant for more civic duty stuff, and supporting roles rather than frontline roles. So the idea of conscripts to the front line is that's a slaughter fest. Yeah, we see it in Ukraine. You can't send 100,000 guys with a week's worth of training. You know what I mean? Up against like battle hardened Russian soldiers. I mean, you'll die fighting against the best against the best get killed. You know what I mean? That's why in every war, usually most of the deaths are early on in the first, say, 5-6 months. Is the death tolls are really, really high, and then after that, it starts to go into the point where it's just like, okay, you're losing guys, but you lose them like a couple of days here, a couple of days there, instead of thousands a day, because the useless guys or the less trained guys, they get killed right away. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that's what it is. So the idea, I think, behind it is that it's the fear of, it's basically Russophobia. There's no doubt about that. That plays a big, big factor in it. Because whether you're politically correct about this or not, whether you want to hear this or not, yes, the Russians. I was listening to in a German, in one of the German delegates last night on the CBC talking about like German submarines for Canada and how like the idea is to do like basically cross training on our submarines and their submarines. Should we take a partnership there? And if we buy their new submarines, which I like the German submarines, even if we buy the South Korean submarine, the KSS-3 versus the new U-boat, it's really German technology anyway, because basically the South Koreans bought their subs from the Germans, and then their new subs are based on that technology. So I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I do kind of favor both submarines are really, really interesting, and I'll cover them in a separate video. But the short of it is the KSS-3 is a really clever submarine. It has like Swedish type clever ability with German engineering. So, like, I mean, built on a South Korean budget. So it's like, it's kind of win-win-win, you know. It's a submarine that would do a lot for Canada. But if we had a bit bigger budget, those brand new, spanking new French Barracuda subs, yeah, I could see Canada with those. Yeah, it'd be nice to have some of those. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, he was going on about, the Russians are taking heavy losses, losing about 1,500 guys a day in the Ukraine and stuff like that. And there's probably truth to that for sure. Nobody really knows what the death toll of the Ukraine is because nobody's going to tell you the truth, right? The Russians aren't going to tell you what their losses truly are, and the Ukrainians, they don't even know what their losses truly are, even if they wanted to tell you, and they won't tell you because they got to keep the morale up on their guys. But all we know is there's a massive death toll there, and the most inexperienced guys got killed right away. You saw it with the North Koreans when they went in, and they dumped the North Koreans right in with the right into the deep fryer. Okay, the Ukrainians are losing the war. There's no doubt about that. The Russians are taking territory every day. Yes, they're taking losses, but they're moving along at a pace that the Ukrainians just can't counter the Russians. And you got to understand that the Ukrainians that are left on the front line, these are the best they got. These are the best of the best. The fact that they've been able to survive this long, like the life expectancy for a Ukrainian soldier right now is not very long. It's like a week and a half, 2 weeks. Like, I mean, that is so devastating. And they started off with the largest military in Eastern Europe at the beginning of that war. So you could see how, starting 300,000, I think that's roughly the amount of conscripts. It was somewhere in that number that Ukraine started with, but that was the conscripts, and then the regular forces was a few thousand. Kind of, I think the Ukraine was either one notch above us for size or one notch below. So they were like maybe all in, say 90,000 people with whatever. Because I remember looking at, like where we ranked. Like I say, Canada's like the 48th largest military, and Ukraine was like 49th. Now Ukraine is beefed up a lot because they're at war, right? So they're like one of the biggest militaries in the world right now, and whatever. But ranking for like effectiveness. But the thing is this goes by what we're finding out is that the NATO tactics don't work in Ukraine. They don't work well. Why? Drones. Drones is cruise missiles, like I predicted back in 2010. I said World War III, the start of it would be fought with like cruise missiles and drones. And now it's like the main four things is artillery, drones, and cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles. That seems to be the main thing. It's like the tanks are getting blown up, everything like that. So one thing I would do, like with Canadian conscripts, like I say, give them the survival training, the first aid and all that stuff, and the firefighting and the flood disaster relief and this kind of scenario, that kind of scenario. Do that, but also train them up on the different weapons, such as mortars, such as maybe you could even get them on some light drones, because that would work. Give them some light sniping capabilities, stuff like that. Give them, like I say, machine gunner course. I think is about a weekend. Like for the course itself. This is the C6 machine gun and the 246 or whatever we got. And I don't think we have a 240. We might have the 240 as well, but whichever ones we have, like the C6, okay, at least train Canadians up on that. Okay, this is how it works. Let them fire off maybe a burst of 10 rounds or something like that, and go from there. You know what I mean? Having conscripts help out for the maintenance crews. Again, you're not going to train these guys to do big things, but hey, Can you go use the tire? Are you smart enough to use a tire changing machine? Okay, there's 8 wheels on this lap. I'll get the wheels off. You just I'll get the tires on. I'll get the wheels off. You just get the tire off from me so we can change the tires. You have a whole bunch of guys helping out with that. That would save the regular armed forces maintenance crews a lot. Just having people. Like the guy that just goes gets the tools to work on the globe masters. You know what I mean? Helping moving the engines around with engine swaps, helping taking the cowling off, stuff like that. You could train people in those like kind of light jobs. You know what I mean? And because people don't have to be certified mechanics to do certain things. Okay, to drain the fluid out of you teach a conscript how to drain the fluid out of a tank or something, or an engine or whatever, do an oil change on the truck, to be a licensed mechanic to do that. As long as you're doing it under the guidance of a licensed mechanic, you're not necessarily an apprenticeship, but, now it could also propose problems too, because that mechanic has to check the work of everything. But it's a lot quicker for him to check the work at different stages than it is to do the work, right? So you have your conscripts doing the work, and then you check it at different stages. Sometimes just delivering stuff for the military. It's like, okay, well, just hey, you got your truck license, okay, you can drive our delivery, our big truck. So I don't see how there's a bad angle here. The thing is, can we afford it? But also you got to think, okay, 300,000 conscripts, okay, fine. And they do a year or 3 years or whatever. 1 week of training and whatever. I say they should bump it up to 3 weeks to a month. Just give a whole month. So say, look, we're going to notify your employer. They can't fire you, but they're going to have to replace you. Okay, and then we're going to take so many recruits per, whatever works out to 300,000. So it's like 6,000 recruits or something like that a week for the next 52 weeks, right? About 300,000. And what you do is basically you take your guy for the month, you train him up on all these crash course things. Basically, within a month, you give them all the stuff with the caveat of, okay, we're gonna like the ranking and the okay, we'll show them how to do basic salutes and how to salute to who and who to salute to. Okay, but we're not going to go forever and a day on that stuff. Like that stuff is not, we're not going to turn them. We're not going to give them 6 months of training in 1 month. But we can give them a crash course of what you would learn in the regular Canadian Armed Forces in that 6 months. You'd get it like kind of like a crash course of it, right? Plus other things more pertaining to like natural disaster relief and stuff like that. And then, like I say, as you go every month, 1 month, okay, they get more survival training, new scenario stuff, and then okay, you learn how to use the artillery gun. You learn how to use, you spend like the morning learning how to use an artillery gun. So at least you got it in your head. How to use a shoulder-fired RPG, even if you don't get to fire any. Like just the dummy ones. You know what I mean? When there's war games, get them to participate in the war games. Maybe okay, you're the rebel forces. Go do what you can do. Paintball, like extreme paintball, right? That would be a great training for our Canadian Armed Forces. Is just to take guys with no training, or little training, and that know our tactics a little bit, but not enough to really, whatever, and just to see how they would be. And a lot of times you get surprised that people with no training use guerrilla warfare tactics that, at first, yes, a whole bunch of guys die right away trying to develop these tactics. But once they develop these tactics, a lot of them become unbeatable. For example, in Poland, they're training the Ukrainians, and some of the Ukrainians are rage quitting because they're like, okay, we're trying to cross a river with tanks or whatever, or APCs, okay, but we can't get across at all because we get whacked by Russian drones every time we move a tank, right? The tanks are almost obsolete. We need to train for that. And there's like, well, we don't have that, so it's like can't train for it, right? So it's like, yeah, that's kind of like how drone evasion and stuff like that, you're going to have to learn how to do that stuff as a conscript eventually, or else you'll get killed on the battlefield really quickly if you ever have to, help with the battlefield. But like I say, the idea of a conscript is a supporting role. So let's say our regular forces military goes up to 200,000, and it's always kind of maintained, people retiring, people coming in new, whatever. Okay, and it maintains at about 200,000 or a quarter million or whatever, up, about double what it is now. Right now it's like 130,000 all in. But that's most people sitting in offices and stuff like that. It's not the fighting force. But when you add up the conscripts, after a decade, you got 3 million conscripts. Even if they're not active, even if they're done their 3-year service, they could still, you could still say, okay, well, if you want to participate, first come, first serve, but you can participate in the war games, or you can participate in this, and, just, till the day you die, or till you don't want to do it anymore. So you could have potentially 3 million conscripts after a decade. And then after 30 years, you have like 9 million people, about a quarter of the population, that would have, this training between the ages of 18 and 60 something, right? So like that's kind of hard to kind of say, hey, that's a bad idea. And really, unfortunately, because it's a liberal government, they won't take advantage of, because they're anti-gun, right? They won't take advantage of that. It's like, okay, you've already got if you've got 2 million plus hunters and target shooters and all that. If you nurtured that a little bit more, you can get those numbers up really high, and those people could become, like they're natural conscripts, because they half of them even have their own ammo, and not enough to fight a war, but you get the idea. So I would really put an emphasis on promoting firearms ownership, legal firearms ownership, and get rid of all this gun buyback stuff and stuff like that. Again, I won't get into that because it's too political. But I think we can honestly say that that the concept is a good concept for preparedness in a very dangerous world. But like the liberals are going to have to kind of like get realistic on firearms ownership if they want to make it practical, right? Because getting 300,000 people that already have their firearms license is a force multiplier, right? And then it's a matter of training. Now, there's all kinds of training courses that you can do in, just target competition and stuff like that. And you can do tactical training in Canada for fun. You know what I mean? It's competition shooting. It's three gun. Well, you had it anyway, because now they're trying to ban all the semi-autos. But basically, you can do 3-gun competitions and stuff like that. Now, the government normally doesn't like their people having, firearms unless they're government employees, right? I think that's what they're going after. Is like, we trust the government employees, but we don't trust the non-government employees, right? So that's probably why they want to conscript them, is they figure they'll be more loyal. I don't know. It's a weird mentality, but it is what it is. Just there's no point in even discussing it, because it's just what's the point, right? But no, I think we could train up people. Give them, if we go with the current proposal, 1 week and then 1 full week of training. How do you jam? What do you jam in that 1 week? Okay, they don't get a uniform, whatever, not a big deal. But people could go out and you could say, okay, well, we won't give you a uniform, but you can wear, if you want to wear camo, wear camo. You know what I mean? That's fine. The boots, all that stuff, I get it. They don't want to spend money on that. What they were really getting at is we just want to give you the basic training of a week and then 1 week a month. But it's like that 1 week a month, if it's going to be like 3rd Canadian Rangers style training, okay, that's fine. it's better than nothing. But I think you could be very laser focused on a program that could run for years, and basically, even a guy like me would love something like that, right? It depends on what the caveat is of of these conscripts. Like it's like, okay, well, if we decide to go toe to toe with Russia in the Ukraine or in Eastern Europe or Europe itself, conscripts get drafted first then no one's going to sign up for that. No one's going to, you'll just get protests. But if it's like, no, it's a civil defense, you can't be drafted overseas. You could do that, but let's say somebody that volunteers as a conscript, okay, and they meet all the requirements of the the regular armed forces and stuff like that. Maybe perhaps you kind of fast track them into the military if they want to do that. Say, okay, well, if you want to get out of conscription and you make the grade and you want to join the Canadian Air Force or the Navy, like we could give people a week on an Arctic patrol ship, or a weekend on a submarine or something like that, and say, okay, well, we'll let them do a backseat in an F-18 or whatever future jet we have, get them to fly with them for a week as one of their specialty weeks where they get to choose, okay, well, I want to be with a tank crew for a week, or something like that, as an incentive to the conscript to join the military, the regular forces. There's all kinds of stuff we could do. But it has to be done sensibly, which good luck with that because we're talking government, right? And it has to be done. It can't be super hyper political. That's the problem. Look, Switzerland sort of figured it out. I think Switzerland has the right idea. I know Canada and Switzerland are not the same countries. You can, and I understand like you have to still do background checks on people and stuff like that, but again, if you're going to pick from a pool, like if I'm a military guy and I'm saying, okay, well, if I'm going to pick a conscript, am I going to pick a guy with a firearms license or without a firearms license, right? And if that you want the people with the firearms license to join up, okay, fine. But if you're trying to take away their firearms while you're trying to get conscripts, you know what I mean? Like it's like it's a no-brainer to say, okay, you know what? Drop the gun ban thing. Buyback thing. We say we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to train you up on the C7 rifle, give you a crash course in it, and and how to move around in a group with rifles, etc., etc. Like you get the dummy rifles first. I get that, and then you go to the range and you learn how to use the rifle. Maybe you get a refresher course once a year of tearing the rifle down and putting it back together and. It can be tested on it. That's fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. Because, rifles are really, there's people out there that just, they can't do anything, right? They're just, you could teach them a million times and they're just too stupid to get it. They're not interested in really doing it, so they don't really try whatever. But if you look at Russia, they've got demonstrations of 10-year-old and 12-year-old little girls in school tearing down AK-47s and putting them back together, okay, and learning about rifle safety in their classroom at grade 2 or 3 or whatever. I'm like, okay, and we're doing what? What are we doing here? Who do you think is going to get the better conscripts, right? Yeah, it's like incentive, because you could do a lot with a conscript. It would be a good force multiplier. It wouldn't freak out your population with an actual draft, like a draft would, because the idea is to encourage voluntarily. So the first year, you're probably, because of how everything's kind of so political nowadays and how everything is so, everybody's so angry and everything like that. You're not going to get 300,000 people stepping forward right away if they think it's a globalist military that's just going to send them off to fight in some foreign war with limited to no training. No sane person is gonna do that. But you keep promoting like patriotism and stuff like that. Get away from the hot button stuff like gun control and just like, okay, well, we'll just go after the criminals and that's it. Never mind this whole pandering to the anti-gun lobby and stuff like that. Because if you're going to take away, law-abiding civilians who are the most law-abiding, a Canadian gun owner is 3 times less likely to break the law than a regular non-gun legal gun owner, right? Like people without guns, and they're about half as likely to break the law than a police officer. So if you want to recruit those people, these are the most honest people you're going to recruit. You got to leave. You got to say, okay, well, we were wrong. We're not going to do the gun buyback. And we're going to get rid of a lot of stuff out of Bill C-68. We're going to make it easier for you to own your firearms, and we're going to encourage you to buy this caliber of rifle so that you can show up at the approved gun range, get your 10 rounds per week or month or whatever, 100 rounds or whatever, like they do in Switzerland, and you can go and practice your shooting. And that creates preparedness. You know how many people would sign up for just those free 10 rounds per month? You know what I mean? You'd be surprised. But, it'd be one of those use it or lose it type of things where it's like, okay, yeah, you got it, but you have to say, you'd be very extremely lenient here. Say, okay, yeah, you have to use this service at least 4 times a year, once every 3 months. So you have to go fire 10 rounds on the taxpayer's dime. You're paying for it too, but for preparedness ready for your country, you got to fire 40 rounds a year. But we'll only give you, say, 120 rounds a year. But if you gave somebody with no firearms experience, okay, a rifle, whether it's like you could say break it up into 2. Okay, well, you're gonna get 10 rounds a month to go do your shooting. Okay, now when you go do your shooting, okay, you're going to do 100. That's 120 rounds a year. Okay, doesn't sound like much, but somebody with zero training, okay, can learn a lot in 120 rounds. So they go to the range. Obviously, they can shoot the rounds how they want. If they want to go bang, 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 whatever. But what you should encourage is a 3-target system, meaning you get 10 rounds, okay, and we want to see the results like a report card, okay, where you shoot at 50 yards, 100 yards, whatever it is. At least one of the 3 targets has to be shot at 100 yards, okay, and you have to resubmit it back to whatever. To the military or whatever. Okay, so you go and they say, okay, you're going to take a C7 rifle. You're going to shoot. You can shoot all of them at 100 yards. You can shoot at whatever, but you can shoot one shot per target and then waste the other 7 however you want, right? Or you can do 3, 3, 3, and then 1, right? Which would be the best, So you do that, you're going to be there for like under 10 minutes. It's going to take you longer to set up the sandbag or whatever, or offhand shooting, whatever. I would practice, obviously, standing, offhand shooting, as they call it, kneeling, and prone, and sitting. Those are your 4 kind of categories of shooting, right? And then if you want to shoot off a sandbag, after that, go nuts, right? I would do that with the first 60 rounds and in any order the conscript wants to do, and then say, okay, well, you shot 60 rounds in a year, you shot 60 rounds out of the C7 after your basic training, right? And then, okay, now what you're going to do is take your bolt action rifle and you're going to shoot the other 120 rounds out of that. Now, the bolt action rifle is the one that's going to teach them the most. Why? Because they can't shoot it as fast. They can't just go bang, bang, bang and have fun, right? They have to actually, whatever. But I'm a bolt action guy. I love semi-autos, I do, but for enjoyment of shooting, you guys, like my big heavy barrel target rifle there. I love the challenge of that, right? Because I love the precision, but I'm a target shooter, right? So that's why I love the precision. But also, too, the skill level it takes to shoot a bolt action rifle, um, properly it's a big challenge. But it makes you think of your shot and how you're going to line up your shot and how you control your breathing and all that stuff. So if you had, again, the Ranger rifle, we'll call it the Ranger rifle that they have, the 3rd Canadian Rangers, and you get to shoot, 60 rounds out a year. Out of that 120 rounds, okay, of government supplied ammo, this would also, could be another industry in Canada. You could also give conscripts a ammo discount where they don't pay taxes on the ammo they buy. So if they buy 100 boxes, whatever, or they pay half the tax. That would probably be better. That way you still get some tax money, right? So, and when they buy the ammo, we support our own industries and stuff like that. And I can guarantee you, the guys, like if you give me a C7 rifle, okay, and they say, okay, well, we're going to give you 10 rounds, but you've got the rifle for an hour. You go and you get the rifle for an hour or whatever. And maybe, let's say, after like 5 years, you get to take that rifle home like they do in Switzerland and stuff like that. I mean, by that time, the barrel's going to be shot out of it anyway. You probably have to replace the barrel. So, that way regular forces can always get new equipment and stuff like that. We get the older stuff, whatever. And, competitions for different rifles and stuff like that you can keep at home, like the Swiss do, right? Like the best garrison is to spread out your garrison. Like you don't want something where a bomb can come in from a fighter jet or a missile and take out your garrison, because that's, there goes your ammo, there goes your rifles, whatever. But if every conscript takes their rifle home, i.e. gun ownership, yeah. So, the conscripts won't be taking hand grenades home, but they'll learn how to throw hand grenades, and maybe they have maybe as a preparedness kit for each, let's say after the first year, you figure out who your good conscripts are, the ones that are really applying themselves, that, mark really high, because you're going to have to, it's not just about giving these people training, it's about evaluating the training that you're giving them. Okay, so let's say there's people that just they're like super soldiers, super conscripts. We won't call them super soldiers, but super conscripts, right? That they go, they're really engaged with the program. They're really, really, really all out for it. Okay, you say, okay, well, every conscript, okay, here by law, you have to keep a minimum, and the government supplies this, of 100 rounds in your house at all times, in case of emergency. And, regular gun laws will apply. They got to lock it up, whatever. That's fine. Okay, fine. But you do that, okay? I would like to see it about 1,000 rounds per conscript, because 1,000 rounds with a C7 rifle is probably about a 20-minute battle. But you know what I mean? Like the average battle is about 1,000 rounds, or about 300 rounds. That's about an average battle. That's a full Canadian Armed Forces or NATO member or U.S. forces. That's typically what they're carrying with their AR-15s or M16s, depending on what they're using. You got basically 6 magazines and 1 in the rifle, so 7 magazines. And magazines typically hold 30 rounds, but a lot of times they load to 28. Just so more magazine reliability, less likely to jam when you're not maxing out the spring, right? So we'll say got 210 rounds, okay? Contact, you're going to shoot those rounds off, and then you're going to be out of ammo and whatever, and hopefully the battle's over by the time you're out of ammo. So that ammo is not going to last long, you know what I mean? So 1,000 rounds would be more ideal, but 100 rounds with a guy with a bolt action rifle. Let's say the country gets invaded. Okay, Red Dawn style. I know, ridiculous scenario, but it's not realistic. But let's say it happened. Okay, they found the Trojan horse in. Next thing you know, you got, okay, it's 10 years later, you got 3 million conscripts. Every one of these conscripts has a kit at home with 1,000 rounds. They got a bolt action rifle or a C7 semi-automatic. You know, you can make a semi-automatic version of the C7. So there's a couple of versions, quite a few versions of that rifle. So, right. So they got their C7, 1,000 rounds. They got their 308 Tika or whatever, 6.5 Creedmoor, whatever they're going to be shooting, 1,000 rounds, right? Okay. We find out every Canadian Forces member has just been held captive by an invading army made up of Venezuelans and North Koreans and Iranians and Russians and Chinese and whatever, you know, all the typical Hollywood stuff, right? And a new kind of secret country that just came in and, you know, put them all together. And then they got them all basically held, okay, captive. So in our kit we have, you know, basic, you know, the basic kit that a regular forces guys would have per se, a survival kit, a water bottle, you know, some ropes, a knife, whatever, you know, whatever you need to build into the kit, right? To have a combat load, right? And you have 1,000 rounds. So basically every single household of these conscripts, you have 3 million guys taking out their, you have 300 million rounds ready to defend the country. So let's say these conscripts can get a half a kill per person. So you're out of 3 million, you're talking about 1.5 million dead enemy soldiers, right? So even if they kill them like 2 to 1, like the soldiers, the enemy is killing them 2 to 1, right? You still win. You still win with guys that survive. You know what I mean? Now let's say if we go with the NATO standard that the invading military will take typically 3 to 1 losses. Okay, now let's say that's the case. Well, you've got 3 million people. You will kill 9 million of those guys before they can ever take over. So that is the odds. Why? Because having that many snipers would just be an impossible. You make your country invasion proof in a decade. You know. Now that said, it doesn't mean you would win a war, but it means that it's such a deterrent that. But you need competency in your conscripts. So like just getting anybody and everybody in there. I get the idea of that. It's numbers, but it's also cannon fodder. So you do have to have a standard. So, okay, you have to be maybe not Canadian Armed Forces fit, right? But fit enough that, you know, like you can sandbag, fit enough that if you had to, you know, come to the aid of a Canadian Armed Forces, you could do it. You know what I mean? Like you crawl through the bush, you can help put out forest fires, you can help the firefighters, you can help the EMTs, you can help the search and rescue guys. You got to be fit enough for that, right? And trust me, if you're crawling through the bush as a guy who does lots of hunting and trapping and stuff like that over my lifetime, crawling through the bush is not, your average office worker is not going to be able to do that with a backpack, a 10-pound backpack, let alone an 80-pound backpack, right? And, you know, like it's just, you're not going to be able to do that. Go out hunting for a day with nothing more on your back than, you know, a backpack with like, say, maybe your seat, your couple of water bottles, whatever, maybe a snack or whatever, so you're going out hunting, and carry your rifle. Now, just cross through a swamp. You know what I mean? Like, how long does that take you? You know what I mean? Like, when you're hunting, of course, you're moving slower because you're hunting, you're not trying to scare everything. But just to get to your tree stand could take you half an hour. You know what I mean? Now, okay, trying to evade drones from getting killed from, you know, like special forces guys and snipers, yeah, it's going to take you a day. You know what I mean? Are you healthy enough to be able to crawl through the mud in the swamp for a day? Yeah. So maybe the you know, the conscript might not be the guy for that, but if he's healthy enough to do that, it's a force multiplier. So yeah, you need that. But if you had 300,000 conscripts on rooftops or in buildings or whatever, helping with mortars and RPGs, anti-tank, shoulder-fired anti-tank, and sniper rifles, yeah, that'd make invasion really, really, really difficult. And if they're helping with drones, that would help make it impossible. You know what I mean? You'd never get around these guys. And just the surveillance angle of having a conscript that has a line or maybe a special radio that is issued. Okay, for the 3 years that you do service, this goes home with you. You don't have to put it on all the time, but if you get a certain call, whether they email you, whether it's an alert service on the TV or whatever, hey, turn your radio on this week because we might have some problems. Keep it on. It's the same as what firefighters do. They have a radio on their dash of the car, and it's just on low, and then every now and then they get beep. Okay, call coming in, code whatever, blah blah blah. EMT's got to do this. The police do this. Everybody does this, right? This is not new technology, right? Your conscript could do this as well. So there will have to be some investments. Okay, maybe you don't buy us a uniform, but we're going to need a radio. We're going to need access to firearms. We're going to need access to that stuff. I love the idea of having like the Swiss model of, like the Swiss, we banned the SIG 550 that we used to be able to buy, which was the Swiss SIG 550. We had the semi-automatic version of it. And those guys in Switzerland, they've got the full auto or multi-burst or the semi-automatic. It's 3-in-1, right? So it's got a couple of different functions. So it's not an outright machine gun because most people don't know what a machine. Most people that say we need to ban machine guns in Canada don't know what a machine gun is. But the Swiss have theirs at home. You know what I mean? They have their main battle carbine. We call it a battle rifle, but it's really a battle carbine, like the C7. It functions similarly. We used to be able to buy those legally here in Canada without the auto feature, the full auto feature, right? I don't think a conscript really needs a burst feature or full auto. Kind of a waste of ammo unless he's training for it. I think semi-auto is the king. You can win a war with semi-autos. You could reissue old M1 Grands or M14s for the conscripts. Trust me, that would be a really, really good thing to do because, I mean, now you've got something. Well, M14, well, I got rid of my M14 years ago, my Norenko M14. But, what was the saving about the M16 back in Vietnam? It was something along the lines of the Martel, the toy maker Martel. It was the Martel gun, right? But it was nice and light, and it was nice and precise and all this stuff, right? But why would you still want the M14? The older Marine guys would go, because people hide behind shit. Enough said, right? Just start issuing out SKSs to everybody and stripper clips. Trust me, that's probably the best thing you could give to a conscript is an SKS. It's simple, it works, it goes bang every time. It could hit the broadside of the barn at 5 yards. It's good enough. It's not a precision rifle, but that's not the concept of the SKS. But the SKS would be the cheapest way to, C7 rifles are too expensive. Okay, we'll train them up on that, but we'll just start, getting I think the world's supply of surplus ammo, 7.6239 has pretty much been used up, especially with the war in the Ukraine. It's getting used up. It's all diverted to there. But maybe I think we unfortunately got rid of most of our old FAL rifles. I would love to see Canadian conscripts with FAL rifles. If we still have the pattern to make them again, let's make those. You know what I mean? If we can get some old there was 94 million of those things made. Maybe we can get some older ones. Maybe they need rebarreling or whatever. Canada loves the FAL rifle. You know what I mean? Let's get our conscripts back. Just give us a semi-auto version only. Why? Because 308 and full auto is insane. Nobody can hang on to it. That's why all these big bore, not big bore, but full size cartridge, battle rifles disappeared, like the M1 Grand and stuff like that. But even in if you have 300,000 people with M1 Grands, okay, it's 8-shot stripper clip mag. Well, they're not stripper clips or box magazine. It's a weird thing. The M1 Grand is a weird. It's a weird magazine that goes into that. It's not quite a stripper clip. It's not quite a, the SKS I think is the perfect conscript rifle. It's semi-auto. Okay, we'll take the 5-round restriction off of it. Put 10 rounds in there. It would be really, really good. It would be really good. But I think a 20-round magazine on a FAL rifle would be much better. And probably, if we could afford it, giving the C7 rifle would be cheaper to shoot, and it's got a 30-round magazine. So we give a load of magazines. Again, it's a no-brainer to do this. And if we go with just a bolt rifle because, they're more efficient at saving ammo, and just train our guys up, the conscripts, to be more like snipers rather than forward infantrymen, because they'll get killed doing that. But, again, let's say the Canadian military has to go and take back a town. Okay, well, on the outskirts of the town, you could have like 10,000 bolt action rifle sniper guys from every angle. So anytime you see the enemy, okay, that's the enemy. We can clearly identify our guys. They're communicating with us. The drones tell us that's the guy. Bang! It's like, it'll be fun. Let's do it, right? And it's like, yeah, we'll be shooting North Koreans and Russians and everything. I'm not saying war is fun. Yeah, you get what I'm getting at. Like, it would work. It would work. Why? Because suddenly you have 1,000 guys backing our best trained guys, right? So, yeah, I'm sure some of the conscripts could get killed, but they're less likely to, and they're more likely to, take a bunch of the bad guys out before they do. But the odds of that are like slim to none. But that's what you would train for. That's what you would train for. The other thing you would train for, I think, would be, like I say, the more likely stuff. And that is having, like I say, in your kit, your gas mask and stuff like that, because of forest fires. Like the conscripts, I don't think just giving them a week training and 1 week a month is enough. They need to have a actual preparedness kit at home ready for action. The same way that, like, your firefighters, your volunteer guys, they always have their gear with them in their car. They don't, got the call, I got to go home now, get my gear up, and then drive through the. No, they're ready to go when they're there. And this is the amateur guys. So if there's that level of standard on the amateur guys, you see what I mean? Like the conscript thing has to be good. I would love to see the program in its entirety, what they're proposing, and how practical it's going to be. But if they want suggestions, trust me, I got lots. I got lots. Maybe they say, yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Probably, right? But I'm sure if you go with true preparedness minded, not PR minded, not like if it just turns into, look at all these female conscripts we got and minorities, and if it turns into that, it's pointless, because that's not what it should be about. It should be about, look at all these people that are patriotic Canadians that want to protect our country and serve our country and contribute to helping our armed forces, helping our search and rescue, that's what it should be about. So if there's any sort of LGBTQ stuff in there, no, it's not going to work. This is why they have like, nobody wants to say the quiet part out loud in the government, but that's exactly why, because they know the political nightmare they're going to get. But that's exactly why people are joining the armed forces in Canada, the United States, the UK, is two things. Number one, they don't want to fight globalist wars. Number two, they don't, no guy wants to be yelled at from a man in a dress. Like they want the Boy Scouts, true military, they want the Devil's Brigade again. They want the Canadian Airborne back. Like they want those type of guys in the military. And if you're not promoting those type of guys, like, look, when they put out recruitment videos of, this is the critique here, My Two Moms, right? We saw that girl, in the States where it's like it was kind of like a cartoon girl or whatever talking about, oh, and I tried so hard to get in and blah blah blah, and my two moms were proud of me, and it was all about the LGBTQ stuff, and it's just like you can't sell it. Then you go look at the Russian ones. Okay, I am Russian man. I am broken. I'm nothing. Life is decrepit for me. I must die. I have no redeeming qualities. I'm going to join the military. Now I fight for my survival. I love my country. I will crush the enemy. And fucking people fucking sign up. Why? Because you took somebody that's broken, but I triumphed. Here's this guy getting yelled at and kicked down a hill, and it's like it's like that will trigger guys to but well, we need women in there. No, no, you need killers in there. The military should be all about the psychopaths and killers, because if you don't get those guys there, you're going to get them as mercenaries overseas, right? Who do you think the Wagner Group is? Who do you think? Look at, and again, I talked about these guys the other day with the soft gripping. The faculty guys, right? These are your psycho killers. You do not the Blackwater faculty guys are called the faculty now. Like these guys, they go around the world as mercenaries, right? The Russians used the Wagner Group. Israel and the United States used ISIS, and they called them Free Syrian Army, whatever. And then you've got like the French Foreign Legion. You've got all these other rebel groups here and there. And then, of course, you've got like the Americans, the faculty is their, special military contractors, right? So they're not U.S. government, but you might as well say they are. These are guys that they don't get to play. They don't play by the same rules. But these guys shouldn't be allowed to exist. I don't believe in any sort of mercenaries whatsoever, because that's for dirty political wars. And I think militaries should be reserved for the defense of your country, and maybe even the defense of allies or whatever. That's fine. I'm not a fan of NATO, but I understand the concept. I'm a huge fan of NORAD because it makes sense for Canada. I'm not against Canada having a Nordic alliance. That makes sense. The Canadian, like of all the NATO countries, like Canada, sure, we're Lot and Latvia and what you call it? Not Romania, but anyway, we're in the Eastern European countries. We're also in Finland and Norway and so that, and Germany a lot too, right? But we need to be more in Sweden, Denmark, Greenland. Like we need to partnership with those guys because they could be, and of course the UK. We already have partnerships with these guys, but we need to strengthen those. Why? Because a Northern alliance makes sense more than anything. You know what I mean? So, like, training in the Middle East doesn't make as much sense as training in Northern Europe, because that's going to be the alliance that creates the force multiplier. That's going to be the real first line of defense. Like I say, the Swedes are kind of like the poor bastards that it's like the big bear is right across the Baltics from them. They can see it. You know what I mean? It's like shit, and there are only 10 million people there, but they were smart enough to have a conscript, right? And stuff like that, and a draft. So I've always said, even when I was a teenager, I said, we should have a draft of some point. But the whole reason why we don't have a draft is because of the disaster of Vietnam, right? Because they drafted people. Okay, World War I, World War II, they were able to draft people because propaganda was a lot easier back then than what it is now. I'm not going to bash on that, but what I'm saying is that back then it was like you need to go fight this tyrant in Europe and Hitler or whatever, and away you go. But North Korea was a tougher sell. It was like, why are we fighting communists off a little peninsula somewhere for South Korea? Like, what does that have to do with us? It had nothing to do with us. Oh, but we're stopping communism. So they were still able to sell it a bit, but they couldn't sell it as good. Then when it came to Vietnam, when they did the draft again, now Canadians, only about 400 Canadians fought in Vietnam as expats, right? And quite a few died. But the thing is that the Vietnam War, the Australians were in there, the French were in there, and they eventually, I think the Dutch were in there as well. And then when they gave up on it, the Americans kind of took over, right, to fight communism. And they lost 58,000 people and killed about 1.5 million Viet Cong, right? And what they found out about that war is that that was the beginning of the end of the draft, meaning you can't just say you're non-patriotic, get into the meat grinder anymore, because people will revolt because the anti-war protests and stuff like that. So then everybody switched to a volunteer military, which okay, we're volunteer, but we could send you anywhere in the world to defend our country, right? But the thing is that the concept was that we weren't going to just be going at war for willy nilly like we do now, because not to get too political here, but our politicians, they don't fight the wars, their kids don't fight the wars, but they make a lot of money off of it, right? So I'm not telling you anything new there or controversial. I don't think there's anybody, even they wouldn't deny that. It's like, yeah, of course they made a lot of money off of it. War is a racket, right? So most people, young people, are not interested in going to fight and die for somebody else's cause or whatever, no matter how noble they say it is on the TV, right? It doesn't work like that anymore. But most people would say, yes, if my country was being invaded, I would like to have the abilities to defend it, right? That's where your conscripts can really come in. So anyway, interesting topic. I don't know which way it's going to go. Of course, from the left, they're looking at this as Carney's like, oh, he's going to send us all to die in Ukraine. Government workers like, oh no, I'm going to have to actually get out of my chair and move around a bit. No. Again, government workers might not be, certain government workers, but most government workers are sitting on their butts all day. They really not the best choice. Again, go into any government building, you'll see what I mean. Okay, yeah, the 20-somethings, they still have the sleek body, but as soon as they start hitting 30 on, like the years of sitting and, just not, like I don't have too many government workers friends, and I have a lot of government worker friends, but that are fit. Yeah, the odd ones that go to the gym and stuff like that. But even then, they have to spend hours at the gym to not be way overweight or whatever. Because you just sit there you're eating, but you're not working anything off, right? Whereas all my labor friends, guys like me that use chainsaws and brush cutters and pole arm chainsaws and whippersnippers and all that stuff. All these guys are kind of okay. Some of them are a bit husky. They're they're well fed, but they're in shape. You know what I mean? There's a big difference. So I know people will pick out problems with it. Again, the usual argument that comes up is, well, on the battlefield, these guys get killed in large numbers. Yes, because they're not fully trained soldiers. But they can be on the supporting role side, helping mechanics, supply chain, stuff like that, surveillance. They can be search and rescue. There's so many areas where they can be not just to help to the Canadian military, but to, like I say, to firefighters, to search and rescue, ambulance, just being the guy in the restaurant when somebody chokes on a piece of chicken. You know what I mean? Oh, the conscript, he knows how to do the Heimlich maneuver. But I think the conscript is part one. I think where it should be planted, the seed of, is through kind of like a resurgence of Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Yes, we have to separate them again, but with an emphasis on teaching kids, not little kids, but say, once they're say 8-10 years old, when they can start to understand concepts of things, start to introduce the ideas of safety, preparedness, and you can teach them in the school system. You don't have to bring them anywhere. It's okay, today instead of learning phys ed today, or your math class today, or your social sciences class today, whatever you're learning today is just all about going to be all about first aid. You know what I mean? Here's how you put a Band-Aid on. Here's how you clean a wound, stuff like that. If you cut your finger or whatever, or how to help your friend in case your friend falls and scrapes his knee or whatever. Start with the little stuff like that. Okay, maybe your friend cuts themselves. Well, you get one friend to go get the teacher while you help stop the bleeding from your friend, right? So, start with the nosebleed, because every kid gets a nosebleed on the playground, right? I was the only kid that didn't. But every kid's like, oh, do this. Oh, friggin' blood everywhere. One kid be screaming, the other one would pass out. The other would be like, and the rest of us laughing at him. But anyway, I was like, oh, and then the mom, what'd you do? He was like, I fell, I did a face plant, I lost a tooth. Oh yeah. But yeah, no, like there's a lot we can do here. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I think this has been a good enough topic for today. I'm sure, like I say, there's going to be a lot of naysayers on it. Again, government trust levels of every government in the Western world is at all-time lows. Like, it's like, what are you really planning? And I get all that too. But if we are to, depending on the details of it, if it's not meant for just more globalist wars, and it was actually meant for civil defense and preparedness, I'm all for it for that. Because I think having a prepared society and just starting that mindset of preparedness, I think most people would volunteer for a conscript. Maybe not for the military, but for a conscript. And that's your stepping stone to boosting your military ranks. But you got to get back to a sound military and get rid of all the woke stuff. Like it's just if you're serious about it, that's what you got to do. It's what you got to do. Anyway, there we go.